Welcome to the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks, and I am your host today, No 782, and I'm also here with my co-host, T the Truth. Can you just say a little bit?
Hey everybody, it's T the Truth.
All right.
Excited to be here. Hope everybody's doing well.
Yeah, man. First off, this is going to be a little different because this is actually the first episode of a weekly throwback that I want to do. We do reviews on other films within at least around the about 5 years ago up to current, and I do current films, and that's as current as I get. I try not to go too much further back than 5 years. But anything else I'm trying to keep as a throwback segment, and once a week, hopefully, at least as it airs, we will do a throwback. And hopefully to air every Thursday, but once a week. And we're gonna pick out the movies that we love most. Some days we'll have themes where we have a little verses about like some dope action films, and I'll throw one out and we'll go through mine, and T will throw out one and he'll go through his. So, but this one, because it's the first one, I wanted it to be special. And what's special to me about this film is Man of Steel. And just so you know, T, and you probably don't, one of the main reasons, matter of fact, let me ask you real quick, do you think you know why I chose Man of Steel as the first episode that we're going to do today?
Well, I do know that you are a fan of Zack Snyder. Obviously, from what I know.
Yeah, I do. All right. Yeah.
I think with everything going on with the whole Snyder cut and, HBO Max, and I know that you are a fan of Man of Steel. It just seems fitting that that's probably why you picked that as a throwback.
And you're 100% right. And with one other addition, that was actually the first film, not actually a review. I did a talk about why I actually love the Man of Steel.
Okay.
And that was actually my first video. You never seen it. I'll probably send you a link to watch it because I actually did some cool cuts and shit. It was dope. I liked it, man.
Okay.
I ain't go for it. I was outside when I recorded it after coming from a bar, but it was real cool. And the thing about it is as you just already had noted, with everything coming out for Zack Snyder's Justice League next year, I thought it'd be even more fitting for me for the first episode that we do, it would be on this film. And what's dope about it is I wasn't sure if I was gonna get T on the first episode, but he will be a regular on this especially this show that we have on, because I think this was probably the best fit. So yeah, man, welcome. Now first, Man of Steel, brief synopsis. We already know the story. This is about a alien from their home planet exploded, and it shows up on Earth. The child shows up on Earth, and it's adopted by an unknowing couple and raised as their own in Arkansas. And once he comes to terms with who he is and his powers, he faces a threat from his actual home world that he didn't even know he was from, and which he would have even just assumed might have not. Well, actually, he didn't even really know that it was actually they all exploded and died. He just knew that he showed up here, and he didn't know exactly why. The thing that's interesting about this update in this film that Zack Snyder decided to choose was he decided to go a different route with explaining the reason, the whole idea of Krypton, and that they don't have a choice for their life. They're actually designed from a genetic stasis from birth for their role in society, almost kind of like an ant type of thing. And what was special about Kal-El was he was actually the first natural born Kryptonian in years, which made him special. And also because they have a codex, which is like all the varying DNA specimens, so they can actually recreate themselves and grow themselves. He had it embedded into the child. So basically, he was not only just a last living person of Krypton, he was their savior, because he had encoded into his body all their DNA sequences where he could actually spawn life on another planet and regrow their civilization again. Unfortunately, the planet was about to be destroyed. Kal-El's a real natural father, of course, tried to let people know. Long story short, the planet blows up, and one of the General Zod, this guy is on his way back from the Phantom Zone after Krypton explodes, and he's looking for the Codex, which happens to be inside Kal-El. And I thought that Zack Snyder took some, unfortunately, and this is another reason why I wanted to do this film. I was actually surprised, and this is the reason why Man of Steel, my love for Man of Steel was the first video, was one of the motivations was I was surprised online how divisive the film was, which was very odd to me, because as I like to coin from John Campea, another notable YouTuber, I really feel like Man of Steel is exceptional in a lot of ways. It's a masterpiece of the genre. And I really thought that a lot of people's critiques of it was kind of odd to me. But one thing that stood out for me about the film was the approach of the film. And I think that was very key with this film. It was very much kind of what if Superman happened in the real world. So T, your thoughts on the film before we get into the picks?
Well, this is what I'm going to say about Man of Steel, and I'll give the audience a little bit of background. I am a comic book superhero person, but I was raised off of Marvel Comics. My father was big on Marvel Comics. I've been reading Marvel Comics since I was 6, 7 years old. I was never a DC fan. You know, I know the main people: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lantern. But I was never a DC fan. And I'm not a fan of Superman as a character. I just never found him interesting at all. But I will say this. With all that said and done, Man of Steel is one of my favorite superhero movies ever made. And I think that says a lot for the movie itself. That a character that I do not like, I don't like Superman, or I never found Superman interesting to me. But this particular movie, if I had to rank all my superhero movies, it is up there as one of the best I've ever seen. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I guess why you could say I'm a fan of Zack Snyder, I think this is the movie that really made me a fan of his in terms of how much I was so interested into the film. And I don't want to spoil the rest of the show, but maybe by the end we can actually answer a quick question. Was this film ahead of its time or way too early for its time? But we'll circle back to that at the end. But since this was my pick, my flick that I picked, Man of Steel, without further ado, we're going to get into the major picks of the film. Now, I was trying to figure out how could I set this actually off. But I was like, you know what? Let me start off with the script. I found that making the first filmatic, like I guess you would say, basically was a remake of the film, since we've seen Christopher Reeves and even the other updated when it came out in the 2000s. I thought for this to be a brand new clean slate, it was a nice amalgamation of the original 1 and 2 films. And I love how he mashed that into a sci-fi first contact, and because everyone talks about that, and I feel like people also forget, they refer to it as what you would call it, a character study, but I will also really push the needle to even call it more of a coming of age film in a way.
Okay.
And with a lot of the Jesus correlations that he used as metaphors, and a lot of people felt that it was on the nose. I don't think it was as on the nose as everyone says. I think for us as movie snobs, if you will, if you could bear with me, if that could be a title for us out there in the movie universe, all of us that, I don't care which channels you watch, that are just really honed in onto the films, you would notice it more. And some people might find it to be something of a redundancy, but to be honest, isn't most films always with that one chosen one, whether it be The Last Samurai in a foreign place, or that one guy that's the odd man out in somebody else's world? I mean, we've seen this with ninja films where there'd be some guy that's not even Asian, but he's over there and he learns and mastery. He's outsourced, but he wants to be acclimated and assimilated into it. And yes, I understand the immigration correlations. I don't think that they touched too much onto it in that kind of nature and a social aspect. It was more on sci-fi aspect, and I think that was probably one of the best approach to making Superman very interesting. And I want to press further with this last point. Superman probably wasn't a good superhero for a lot of people. I always hear that. It is. I think it's more because he wasn't interesting. He was like the game genie of superheroes. He was the dude that you ever just play make believe with your friend, and now you got this power, and now you got this power. It's like, nigga, like what power don't you have? Like I'm invulnerable to that, and it's like, ah, come on, bro. That's what Superman was. He was the guy that was just came into the room and he could do damn near do anything. So it was like it was no real tension, no real weight to anything that he dealt with. And the thing that I thought was interesting about this approach was the conflict within himself was actually his biggest. I want to say so much his villain, but his actual antagonist, if you will, going against what he was raised and finally making the choice to be who he needed to be. And I think there was so many things with it peppered without the films and hallmarked without the films that I don't know what if other people missed it or not, but that was so critical to telling a Superman story for this day and age to actually make him interesting as opposed to just this. I mean, of course he's God, but godlike in his powers, but to make him relatable. Your take?
Yeah, if I had to pick what I really liked about it,
I mean, in terms of my pick, and then you could get into your pick and your ideas or anything.
I really can't disagree with anything you said. I think you hit a lot of noses on the head. I didn't really get. I heard people talk about it. I didn't really get the whole Jesus God aspect in watching the movie. And I haven't seen interviews with Zack Snyder, so I can't say whether or not that was a motivation for him. One of the things I do agree with that it's a very grounded character study of what it is to be this person who is not of this world. Whereas, this was the first time that Superman was human, in a sense. There was a certain loneliness to him. There was a certain uncertainty to him. There was a certain self-doubt about him. A certain acceptance about him of someone trying to find out who they are. You're usually seeing Superman as someone who's always self-assured and he knows his path.
Can I keep you here, not to interrupt? Don't you think that that's also something that gave him a lot more relevance towards you as a person that never was interested?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So this was a character study in a superhero action sci-fi movie. Mm-hmm. And I thought this was a different take on Superman because the takes seen before is a man who is self-assured, who knows his path, who knows this. This was a Superman who I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know how to fly. I don't know where these powers come from. Guess what? I do get angry. I do get angry. Can I point out a specific scene?
We got time. Throw in a scene.
Okay. It was just a specific scene to show how grounded he was.
I'm listening.
It was the scene when he's getting bullied.
Oh yeah.
And he chooses not to fight, and his father tells him, I know you wanted to just punch this kid. And he's like, I know I could hurt him easily. And he doesn't. But when he takes his hand off the pole, you see how easily he squeezed the pole as a boy. Mm-hmm. And to know that I have to get picked on, and to know easily I could just snap shit out. You know what I mean? You're picking on me, and I really can just end this problem really fast.
That was one of my... a very impactful scene to me in that film as well.
The other scene that I really, this is the scene where I saw in the preview, and then when I watched it, I knew this movie was different. Do you know what that scene is?
I'm listening.
When Superman, as a boy, saves the bus,
Mm.
Someone sees him, and he has his conversation with his played by Kevin Costner. Actually, a really good supporting role by Kevin Costner. And he says to him, "Should I have let the, I told you you can't let people know about your powers." And the boy goes, "Should I have let them all die to keep this secret?" And his father's answer is, "I don't know, maybe." That was the scene where I said, "Oh, this movie's different."
And you know what? That's probably the linchpin to all the anti Zack, or not even just
so
Zack
funny because
Snyder,
I
but
was just
anti
about to
Man of
say,
Steel campaign that there's been
and,
online.
and it's interesting because that particular scene was in the trailer, one of the first trailers.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was one, and that was, I remember when I saw the trailer in that one particular scene, and I thought, "Oh, this is going to be different."
So before we leave off on this, I will want to add this one scene where the priest was talking to Kal-El when he had the moment, and I think that was kind of an allegory for the 40 days or 40 nights before Jesus went off to the desert to figure out what he had to do, because that was when Jesus, before he had to go through his trials, he had a period of doubt, and he was going back and forth with his father. I think that was an allegory moment. But one thing I know about, because like you say, you didn't notice, if you notice when he's in there and the priest is talking to him, the close-up shot that they have right over his right shoulder was Jesus on the stained glass shit. It was like they was kind of letting you know, like even when he was on the ship and he said, you could save him, you could save her, how he fell out the ship in the symbol of a cross. Now that someone else on the channel had brought up, and I was like, oh, all right, yeah, I noticed that. I didn't really, when someone brought it up, it stood out to me even more. But yeah,
Right.
there are a lot of allegorical comparisons towards it. So now you got my pick, your pick.
As a pick, that's something that really stood out for me, and this is going to be interesting, the look of the movie.
Okay.
And why I say that is because this is something that, and I'm going to go back to Christopher Nolan's Batman, right? It's a really dark-looking movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Zack Snyder, who had 300, Watchmen, the one with the girls, Sucker Punch, a lot of colors, a lot of bright colors, gotta look. Somehow he was able to make Superman colorful and dark at the same time. Like, his suit is red and white. Blue and red. But there was a darkness to the blue. And I thought the look of the movie, though not as dark as a Batman movie, but not as bright as the 300. And I thought the look of it was really just, I really thought, because again, for someone who's a big fan of Superman, I was like, I don't want this big bright, like take for example Spider-Man. Spider-Man's a bright looking movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look at the old Sam Raimi, even to, Sam Raimi to Andrew Garfield, they're bright. You know, he's got a red and blue costume. It's bright. Even the Tom Holland, it's bright. Superman wears the same colors, but there was a darkness to it. And I really fell in love with the look. Like, I don't know if it's a different camera, was it lighting, but it was the look. And that's something that really stood out to me, like, wow. He was able to have, because most of the scenes are in the day. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think there's really any nighttime scenes.
You're absolutely right. I don't think there was a nighttime scene.
And there was still a darkness in it. And I felt that added to the groundedness of it. I think that was a personal choice of how he shot it, where, yeah, it's not at nighttime like Batman. Most of it is shot in the day, but there's this dull dimness to it. And I really love the look of the movie.
I will say this, I would like to parry off of that. I actually believe you are right that he did it purposefully. I think that this was his most grounded film up to that point in terms of, even like you said, basically the aesthetic of the film. It was very sci-fi, something that I didn't even think that the person that did 300 did this. I thought he would have did a lot of slow-mo, a lot of this. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. It wasn't colorful like that. It wasn't portrait. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I think he employed a lot of his Snyder-esque aesthetic in BVS, and I always wondered if that was something that they wanted him to do, because I feel like this was supposed to be his anti-300 film. I think this was the film that he was going to be like, you think I'm going to treat this like I did 300 with like a lot of stylized, over stylized thing? No, this ain't even, this is Superman, and I'm not giving you stylized. I'm going to shoot it like I would have shot a straight up film. Nothing different. And I do feel I got the same sentiments you did. My second pick now was casting. Whoever, and I should have looked up the casting director on this one. I mean, you got Henry Cavill as Clark Kent, aka Kal-El, and Superman. Amy Adams as Lois Lane. You have Kevin Costner, Jonathan Kent, Diane Lane as Martha Kent, Larry Fishburne as Perry. You got Michael Shannon as Zod. I forget the young lady's name. I think Auntie Torre. I don't know how to say her name, as Feora, and I really liked her. But I want to just run through a lot of these characters real quick, because I think that they carried this film. You needed a lot of character analysis and the actual relationships with everyone. Henry Cavill as Clark Kent, Kal-El as being, as you even said, very doubtful of himself. He expressed that a lot in his emotions, the nuanced scenes. He even standing next to Diane Lane, which I would have, in any other film, if you would have dyed her hair, she could have probably been played like a slightly older leading lady opposite Henry Cavill, if you will. I don't know if that's a far stretch, but I've seen her when she's in her glamour, and she could have, for her to play the mother and her carry that kind of air around her and that nuance around her, especially when they were even on screen together, they sold that to me. And even Kevin Costner as the father. But before we get into that, Amy Adams as Lois Lane. Now, this is one thing I'm not sure if they did on purpose, but I feel like it was. I feel like Amy Adams did come off older than Superman. And I think that was actually the aim. And I don't know if the actress is actually older than him, but I thought that was a great posturing between them. The reason why I say that is this: for him to be the superhero, but this is his first go out, to have such a strong opposite lady with him, I thought the thing that was kind of one of those opposites attract, if you will, if that was part of the ingredients towards their chemistry, was the fact that her being older added to the fact of how seasoned she was as a reporter, and how aggressive she was in her nature, been there and did that, to find this guy that is uber stronger than her, but doesn't have this. He's a small town kid, small town. He's a man, but he's got that, I'm a small town dude that doesn't really want to be known. He could have probably been a jock in any school, but I thought that was a great, I don't know if the word is kind of like they were saying art contrapposto, in terms of, it's a word in art, and I'm just trying to correlate it right here, but it was just it was a good fit for who they were. Like, where she had experience, he didn't carry that experience. He was very, water behind the air, where she was very strong because she's been here and did this as an aggressive investigative reporter. He was not. He was just a nomad, just trying to get to day-to-day fit in, and if I can help, I can help. And I thought that was interesting, especially going with a redhead aesthetic. He didn't even try to dye her hair. Like, I thought that was kind of odd. And I'm more of a purist, unless you could tell that the director was aiming for something very special, where it could work to try something different. And for me, I think it worked. And briefly, again, Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent as the father that's just trying to figure it out, not because I'm just a father. I'm a father first, but I'm literally handling like a WMD, like this is like a weapon of mass destruction right here, and this is my son. And even like the moment that you brought up where he has to say he doesn't really know, he himself, and this is a scene that I don't understand why people felt like he was a bad parent. He did care about saving people because he risked his life to save others, save his dog, but also save a couple people when the tornado came. So this whole concept of how Superman could have just flew there and did that, and I just want to say this, and I just want to segue this, that flew there, could have did that before a blink of an eye. That stupid idea. This is a grounded film. If he would have did that in the blink of an eye, he would have broke his dad's neck. There was no way he could have saved his father without him being obvious. He was an older man. Like, he wasn't going to fly and do it before people blink, even if he could go that fast in Snyder's universe. He would have literally broke his dad's neck jerking back and forth like that. You know what I mean? I mean, you got to be realistic. The idea was that for you to save me, you have to expose yourself. And that self-sacrifice, it wasn't, it went all the way. He was very consistent man. He didn't. It's not about not saving those kids on the bus. It's about I'm your father first. I care about you. It's all about you, and that was his legacy. And until you're ready to make that decision, and I hope you can, you know what I'm saying? Then you'll cross that bridge when you went through it, because they knew who he was. He wasn't a bad person. He was just trying to figure it out. And if I could go through the last, even the cast of the newsroom was very Murphy Brownish to me. I like it was like she was Amy Adams was Murphy. The dude with the croissant hairline was basically what's his name? Oh man, I forgot his name. Basically the same croissant hairline. Her was it Frank? Was like Frank. Miles, even though Larry Lawrence Fishburne was nothing like Miles, it just felt like they had a lived in kind of, everybody had their personalities where they could bounce all off each other. And I want to go through the villain. Zod, excellent villain. And if I could say anything to him just to speed this along, I just think he brought a certain type of presence to Zod. He might not have been your what's the guy that played Joker? Heath Ledger. Might not have been that for you guys. And he didn't need to be, but he was exactly what he needed to be to still command the camera when he was on screen with that very stoic and angered, aggressive presence. And last but not least, Feora, a woman that got very, very few lines. And I have to point this young lady out, because my scene was when they came out of the Phantom Zone and they watched Krypton exploded. She fell to her knees. Again, they was able to get such a good cast of actors that even for the very few moments that you had, they felt like a full rounded character. Like, I was interested in Feora's background. Even though we knew who she was, she carried that role for the brief moments that we had her. She was exactly as intimidating as she needed to be. Very strong, but most importantly, she was an adversary worth reckoning. And you can't all the way say that Superman just whooped her ass. You can't really just say that. And I thought that was an excellent thing. And that's it really for my second pick. A major pick was the casting. Your thoughts?
Okay. Well, just to jump on two things you said, I do believe in real life Amy Adams is about a decade older than Henry.
Is she?
In real life. Yeah, I believe so. I believe he was, I think, 28 or 29.
Was he? I thought he was in his early 30s. I'm sorry.
I think he was. I think he just was like 20 and 29, maybe just hitting 30, and she was in her 40s, or maybe even 40s. I think she's got about a decade on in the real life.
Oh wow! Okay.
I think so. My second pick is actually the action sequence.
Okay.
And I think that because, and I'm going to go back to Zack Snyder when he did something different. I saw 300. I saw Sucker Punch, and even some of Watchmen is a little different, but I'll take the two big ones, 300 and Sucker Punch. besides the bright colors, it's a lot of slow motion. I thought one of the things he did amazingly to show that these are super beings was the fight in the street where he sped up all the action.
Yeah. There's actually interesting interviews where he talks about the choice for that. Continue.
So there's a scene where Fiora is surrounded by cops, and it's just a speeding, and she takes them all down really fast. Or when she first fights Superman, and I think they crash through like a Denny's or IHOP or something like that.
It's IHOP, yeah.
Yeah, and she moves really fast. And just to let you know, to throw in a little more about how he's unsure of himself, what is the line Fiora says to him when she like?
She actually mentions it. You're unsure of yourself.
She mentions it. She goes, "You're unsure of yourself." And when he tries to punch her, that whole thing where they sped up the speed, I thought was amazing. Even when I thought that showed, and normally I don't like that because it's kind of cartoonish. You know, it's kind of a cartoony thing. But I will say for
what,
that,
slow-mo?
Actually, huh?
Slow-mo is cartoony for you?
No, the speeding up.
Oh, okay.
I think it's kind of cartoony. I've seen it in cartoons. I've seen where you go really fast and it doesn't look right. But I think that in this movie, the way it was shot, it was amazing. I never saw that. I've never seen that done outside of a cartoon. And I thought, wow, that was amazing. So I do believe the action sequences, that in particular, that whole street scene, but that whole speeding up, I thought was a brilliant choice that really stood out for me.
I believe
so that's my second pick.
I believe he, just to have a sharing thought onto that, I believe he actually discussed about how he wanted to do it. He was like, he felt like they could move so fast that you're supposed to feel like if you blink, you missed it. And that's the aesthetic he went for. And I think that was one way that I felt like that was his way to show a middle finger to anybody that thought that he was a one note director. Like, all my films, no shade to this director, because I do think he's brilliant, and I think he gets a lot more flack that he deserved, but it's not without note. Tim Burton, I think he was like, before you think I'm Tim Burton, I'm not.
Okay.
Like, you know it's Tim Burton as soon as you see it. I think he wanted people not to assume that, and I think Sucker Punch predates Man of Steel, correct?
Yeah, Sucker Punch is after. Sucker Punch came before Man of Steel.
Yeah, so after that and having Watchmen, I think he was like, this is going to be a straight up sci-fi film, and I'm going to have you really feel like, because even with Watchmen, he made it acceptable to see these superheroes, even in the cheese costumes, which kind of worked well because it was kind of like a flashback to the past, so they were really extra comic-y then, and he made them work in the real world even with that cartoony aesthetic, but it was very still stylized. For him to remove all of that and say, I'm gonna shoot this like a straight up sci-fi action film, and he used, I think, a little bit of shaky cam, I think is the technique on it that you would see in like disaster films, and I think that was amazing. And to be honest, when you kind of think about it, like, part of the film was a disaster film. How about that? Now to get into my third pick, which kind of parries off of what you just talked about, and how I wrote it was to show exactly how extraordinary these Titans truly were. And so this is not going to be a long pick, because it basically parries off of exactly what you said. A lot of the fighting sequences and how he depicted them, he made them, he showed that they were extraordinary and they were gods amongst men, but he didn't over stylize it. Like, he did it in BVS and it was within reason, but for Man of Steel, he didn't want to overly shoot him in such a manner to give you this epic gothic appearance of every time they jumped on the screen. No. It's a sci-fi film. They're aliens. Yes, they're like gods amongst men, so you're going to really see them throw down. But he showed you that. And in spades, but still was able to make it come off very believable and threatening. nonetheless. Especially no pullbacks, and I will also add on, he didn't do a lot of pussyfooting around the fact that when these guys throw down, you get thrown into a building, these shits is they going through buildings. And you're not going to just see like how back in the day when you watch G.I. Joes, there's always going to be a parachute floating out just to let you know shit's safe. Motherfuckers died. like they really showed you when they got into the world disaster parts of the film and showing exactly how epic and extraordinary these titans were and how they fight and how we are like ants underneath their squabble. And I think it was just like you said, just shown in an amazing way. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I can't even add to that. I think that you're dealing with what we would consider the closest thing to gods, and he really not really went out of his way, but I wanted to show you their power, and he did. And that's he did. I think it was mission accomplished. From the street fight to the aerial fight, I think he wanted to let you know that they do damage, and that's what it is. Am I up to my third pick, or you?
Yes, sir. Your next pick.
Okay. My third pick is actually the first scene, which is the whole backstory on Krypton.
Great pick. Continue.
I thought that the whole, and it was about 15 minutes, I believe. I thought for his little role, Russell Crowe made me very interested in the story of his father. I thought the woman who played his mother, I thought the friendship between Zod and is it
Jor-El.
I thought that their dynamic, it almost made me, I know there's a sci-fi show, but it almost, and I'm not a big fan of...
I heard it's actually good, if I could just throw that in there. I actually heard it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it got canceled from what I know, but I will say this, I've never been a fan of prequels. I'm just not. And I think maybe because the Star Wars prequels really turned me off. I've never been a fan of prequels. Yeah, I don't like the Star Wars prequels. It really turns me off. I really don't like them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
You're a big Star Wars guy?
I'm a Star Wars guy, but I didn't like those three prequels. I really didn't. But I'm not a big fan of that. I never was. So, but I will say, that little 15 minutes on Krypton, if Zack Snyder wanted to make a Krypton movie before Superman, with Michael Shannon, Russell Crowe, I would be very interested in that. I thought the last scene where the Krypton is blowing up and the mother just stays behind because she's going to die, I thought it was a beautifully shot scene. I really enjoyed that scene. Can I add something else that I do have to add as a pick for me?
Excuse me?
Can I add one more thing that is a pick for me?
Oh, we could do that after this one because I have a fourth pick.
It lends into the Krypton scene because there's a lot that's there.
Well, first let me get into my last pick, and then you can carry over. Because how many you have? Only one other pick?
No, just one more. All
right, so let me throw. Then I'll just say this. That's the actual end part of your pick, correct?
Yeah. My last pick was between these
just
two.
The opening scene. All right, so just so my thoughts on that, I actually think that's a dope pick that you actually picked the opening scene because, and I think at some point before everything with BVS and the Justice League, somewhere along that line, I do think that was the idea to carry over and do something with Krypton with Russell Crowe. I do believe that was actually an idea at its inception, because one thing that no matter how divisive you might have been about it, a lot of people really did enjoy the opening scene. Really did enjoy the opening scene. And I think Krypton was supposed to be, when I think maybe around that time when they had ideas to carry on with the Krypton, they wasn't sure whether or not it was going to be a spin-off of the film. And from what I understand, it's not.
Okay.
It's not exactly, nah. Yeah, but it takes base, like, I think with the grandfather, so it kind of can be very ambiguous, because, and from what I understand, the Zod line is black, which is interesting. So I think, take that for what it's worth. So yeah, I don't know if somewhere along the line, I don't know how the tribes are. I never seen the show, so I'm sure there's an explanation, or it is a completely something divorced from this Snyderverse. But like I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I do like that last pick. My last pick is kind of touches on what you said earlier, was costume and set design. And one thing, even in my first video ever talking about it, was the design of the ships were fucking amazing to me. Like, I really am into character design, costume design, and things. It's like a story within a story. And just the idea of how I feel like, again, they used a lot of ants and exoskeleton type animals, like lobsters, shell stuff. If you look at how the ships are formed and opens up, you could kind of tell that, or it felt like the person was using a lot of elements from how ants are shaped and how they move, but as exoskeleton, and how crabs, even how the ships flies kind of like, not exactly like how a crab is. Crabs walk kind of to the side, but it felt like it buoys to the side a little bit, kind of like a crustacean. I think that's what you would call them. But needless to say, I do want to take a moment to marvel at the Superman suit. I know he said that he tried many different ways to keep the underwears on. Taking it off, because he said, well, he was trying to do it so did it look comical. I think if this was a spinoff off of Watchmen, he could have got away with it, because Watchmen was very stylized. As a straight up superhero flick, this one, and being grounded, it was a great idea. And they was already toying with that in the comics already. But to remove the underwears, I think it looks amazing. I think this was the best Superman suit. I like this suit better than the BVS suit. I liked how, I mean, I felt like they made him use more colors because of people was complaining about it in BVS. But that's another kind of, we could do that as another review somewhere down the line. But the costumes, even like the little etchings, I love the idea that it's an Under Armour, basic Under Armour suit that they wear, and they put other stuff on top of it. It made Superman's real costume very relevant. They in the original film, it was more about ice, and very, even Jor-El's suit was very, because they had the crest, it made sense. But he didn't wear capes. They just wore all white and black. It was real interesting that he would take on a suit like that. This one, they found something in the middle. They wear darker tones and stuff like that. And I felt like the idea, he made that suit specifically as a gift to his son, so he could wear it whenever he was ready to show the world exactly who he was. So I think it was very specific. I think he chose those colors to pop for them, but normally the suit would normally be black or in very dark in tone. And again, like I said, the costume designs were just amazing. And for such an iconic suit to be so well detailed and well crafted, if you ever really look at the suit, it's a marvel onto itself, with all the subtle details all across it. It's like it's crafted very well. You could tell this was a labor of love, and I think that shined throughout the film to a guy that actually pays attention to this much. And the darker tones worked. It worked. I know some people don't like it. It worked for me. It made the film seem credible for making you really believe, like how they marketed the original Christopher Reeve's film. We will make you believe a man will fly. And even though people says that was kind of comic-y, not really. They played the original movie very straightforward. If I'm not mistaken, that same director was the same director of Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, Richard Donner.
Yeah, Richard Donner. Again with Christmas. Again with Christmas. But yeah, like I just felt like if Richard Donner did a film like that, and even back then, to me, I always thought that it was kind of believable. But when you're a young kid, back with what we had as technology, of course, to see that kind of a film was amazing. The tag was always, "We will make you believe a man can fly." And I think after where we've come from up to this point, even going through the golden age of superhero films, I mean, X-Men was around that time, and especially the darling of the genre, the MCU. This really made you believe that man could exist. And I think a lot of it was that idea was held together by the costume designs and the set designs. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I concur. I thought that the whole set design, the costumes, I can't really find anything wrong. I thought that it was really, I could find nothing wrong. And it's funny that you say that, because my pick kind of lends to that, if you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
The score.
I ran, because I could only keep to 4. I was dying to do one. I'm going to do an extended clip and do an add-on after we're done.
I thought the score, the music,
mm-hmm.
the music that was played during the fight scenes, during everything, the cryptology, that was the same music played in the previews.
Mm.
That beat, that music was absolutely perfect. The score of the movie stood out so much to me. The score. And since you brought up costume designs and all that, they kind of lends to that.
Yep, that's a fact.
I thought the musical selection that, I don't want to mess it up, but I remember it in the commercials. I remember it during the fight. I just thought the score of the movie was flawless.
Well, if I could just jump on to that, I will also argue, and I think it's fair to say that the film, the music, the score composition, I almost felt like it was a cast member towards the film. I really feel like it was just another cast member, if you will. It was a character onto itself. It made you really take the film very credibly as a film.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's it for the picks as it is right now. So now we're going to get on to the next segment, the nitpicks. And this is where we could get nerdy, corny about the things that we would have liked to you seen, whether I wish this scene would have been extended, or I didn't like this part of a costume, or this choice of the film, or I hated the way they shot this, or nitpicks, the things that really either get underneath your skin that they didn't do, they did do, or just those little extra stuff that normally shouldn't affect the film, your viewing pleasure that badly, but it might be something that just really, like what they say, grinds your gears. But in any event, I felt like since it's my pick and I have to kick off my nitpicks, and I think you probably feel like you're gonna know my nitpicks. One of which I almost forgot about, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Again, on the nitpicks, we do about like 2 to 3 major nitpicks, and like I said, I might do an overtime edition to it where I really like this film, and for the first episode, I kind of want to give the viewing audience something very special for our first film, our first episode. But needless to say, on with the nitpicks. I felt like I'm gonna come in hot. I'm gonna come in hot, and the destruction at the end, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was way too much, because I remember being in the theater watching it. I was like, how do you top this? Like, this is like, if this was gonna be a trilogy, like, wouldn't this be like part 3 or at least a good 2? Like, I was like, the level of destruction, how do you level up from that? Like, you're gonna have to damn near crack the earth. So I was like, I thought it was uber excessive. I mean, because I think that even at the idea of seeing it with the MCU being out there, the idea was that we was expecting, and I think this is unfortunately worked against it. We expected a similar model. We figured it was going to be a long, at that time I think the MCU was 5 years in, started in 2008. This came out in 2013, 5 years in. And the long format over several different films, it got you to the Avengers where you seen that level of destruction. It just felt like if this was going to be like a one-off, we're going for the Oscar award winning Superman, it would have been just one film, Man of Steel. Then I was going to be like, I felt like that was the huddle. Let's go broke or go home. This is the one and done. There ain't going to be no part twos to this shit. And if this would have ended, I think this would have been, again, a marvel of the genre. Like this, if people say that X-Men, it was considered the film that let people in Hollywood know that we could actually turn superheroes, comic book source material into actual motion picture, a credible motion picture. I feel like Man of Steel, as it is, was just that. And it could have been a one and done and gone. I'm glad we got more after it, but the level of destruction was ratcheted up so incredibly that it was like, damn, man, like, how do you take it? How you turn it up? Usually the movies you want to turn up the threat level. It was like, damn, man, what you gonna do after this? You know what I'm saying? And clearly we see where we went after this. It was like, yo, kill Superman, fuck it. Why not? We turned it up. So that was something that I felt that was a little overdone. Maybe they should have taken out the world engine part. I don't know. Or maybe they should have put the world engine and placed it in the ocean. So it would have just, the level of destruction to Metropolis. Because the destruction that was in Metropolis, if you have the next, even though they didn't show as much of Metropolis, the city, afterwards, I would feel like if part 2 took place a few months, if I'm not mistaken, it took place 6 months or so after Man of Steel, or close to a year, I feel like the level of destruction in Metropolis, they should have still been collecting the dead. Like they should have been out there. The city skyline should have been still effed up. It should have been all different types of scaffoldings, and I just felt like you should have felt the presence of that everywhere throughout BVS, the type of destruction that they had. And I think if you would have destroyed Metropolis that kind of way, it was like, well, what could we do moving forward with other films? Because I feel like the level of destruction, you should have felt that throughout the next trilogy, if that, like, the level of destruction that city went through. Because if I'm not mistaken, it was ground zero of the world engine, and it was like, that's why I felt like they should have put that out in the water. like somewhere out there in the water somewhere, or like just out of Metropolis, as far away from Metropolis as you could have. And that was a nitpick of mine. Thoughts?
Well, I will say this, and remember your last statement about, I think the second one was 6 months, so they should have still been building.
What? Say that again.
Right? Remember you just said, like, when you go to the next one, which is BVS, it's probably supposed to be like 6 months to a year later, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would think they should still be building buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
9/11 was the building that came down. Well, to the Twin
I was
Towers.
thinking that too. Go in.
It's well over a decade, and they still cleaning up.
Yeah.
So I don't know how these guys destroyed Metropolis, and 6 months later, they have the greatest
cleanup crew ever.
Construction ever. So I just want to throw that in there. I had the same issue you had when I saw it. I thought that the last fight scene started off well, and then it just became press the button and blow. Like, whoever was doing the special effects had a whole line of buttons. It just said press, blow it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? This movie cost $100 million to make. How much did we spend? Yo, we only spent $85 million. We're ahead of budget. What are we gonna do with this extra $15 million?
Yep.
What are we gonna do with this? Yo, man, give it to the stunt coordinators. Yo, man, here's an extra $15 million. Blow it up.
That's a good callback. Because the reason why I laugh, audience, is because that was something that I've said from before. It was like, yo, what do we do with the rest of the money? Blow everything up. And it's funny you brought that shit back because we used to talk about that for a long time, about that end scene.
That's how I felt like it was a lot of just let me blow it all up. So that I do agree with you on that. So can I give you my nitpick?
I thought that was the nitpick.
No, because you already.
Oh, so all right, so go in.
Real simple. He's so hot.
You. Yes. Yes.
Really. And now, I'm a guy. Henry Cavill is a good-looking guy. I get it. He's built. He's muscular. He really put on, I think he added like 20 pounds of muscle. He worked out about 6 months before they started shooting. Like, I'm a guy who likes to work out. And I remember he was on the cover of Men's Fitness, and it was how he built his Superman body. Also, you can go online and look up Man of Steel workout. And they have this actual, him working out with the Jim Jones guy. Like, you can really look at it. If you look at Man of Steel, the version that has the bonus features, they have it. I had it on DVD, and it came with 2 DVD cassettes. One was a behind the scenes, and it was a whole building Superman's body. I get it. But that very last scene, where he throws the satellite and tells the general, you're not going to find out where I live, blah, blah, and the general looks at his whatever, private or whatever, and he goes, what you smiling? And he goes, he's so hot. I really hated that scene. I really hate it. That is when sometimes the writers and directors don't give the audience enough credit. Henry Cavill was a good-looking guy. You don't have to tell us. And you don't have to tell us. And that whole, he's so hot. And to be honest, here's another thing. In this world, and maybe because it was years ago, that scene would have been looked at as sexist right now. That would have been looked
at as sexist. No, it wouldn't, because it's the other way. Because let's be for real, it's the other way. If it was Superman looking at her, then it would have been the male gaze. There's no female gaze that anyone wants to discuss about. No, it's not that. I'm just saying, like you said, in the world that we're in today, I just don't think that they would.
I got you. I just wanted to say, I really, as a nitpick, if I want to get my nerd on, I really hate that one scene.
Well, I mean, my thoughts really is not much thoughts on it to it, because my major pick was that exact scene, the he's kind of hot scene. For me, like, and you know, that was always a big issue with me from when I first seen the film, and we talked about it from a long time ago. That was one of the biggest irks, like eye rolls I've ever seen. When this chick said it, it was like, you were doing so good, and then you put the cheesiest line into the movie. Like, it was the cheesiest. It's like, they have one line like that at BVS. I won't disclose this time at this part, because that's a nitpick of mine when I get to BVS, but it felt like it was just a scene that I will give credit to you for acknowledging, or saying on that kind of level that you did give the audience enough credit. But I'll take it a step further. I don't think it was even needed to be said. Usually your antagonist is always going to be some sort of even though subjectively whether you're attracted to the person or not, you could tell by objective aesthetics that he was played up to already be the attractive, quote unquote, Adonis, if you will. So the need to have to say it kind of took breath away from the film, and it took a lot of the seriousness out of it. And for me, it just made me feel like, yo, you're a soldier, and you couldn't, at least in this moment, not wet yourself over this guy. Are you fucking kidding me? And you're supposed to be my right-hand man out here in these streets, and we got guns, and you could really be deterred by the looks of a guy in this time? It was just, it was such an eye roll for me, and again, it just took it was. It was something of a misstep for the sake of a line at the very end, which I know was supposed to be kind of your levity, your breathing, and I just felt like they could have been a more subtle approach to that. Like if she would have stared and he said, "What's the problem?" and she soldiered up, "Nothing, sir," and you just and then he looks at him. And Henry Cavill looks at her and he says, get to the Humvee." And then he should have figured it out, and the audience should have read that. I think that should have never been verbal. It's so schoolgirlish. I just think it just, for right where you were going with this film, that's when you kind of turned it into, not as a shot, but you kind of gave it that Marvel formula that we're doing the seriousness, levity, serious levity, joke, levity, serious, that pattern, if you will, of storytelling that makes MCU so good. I felt like it was at the last minute. You felt like you wanted to throw that there, and I felt like for the way you was doing the film, if you wanted to do it that way, you should have did it within the lining or within the setup, the way you did the film, a lot more subtle, because the subtlety of all these characters. Look how much we was talking so much about. I could talk about each character, and a lot of these guys, I'm sure if you look at their minute time on screen, wasn't that much when you think about it. And we could talk so much about each character. So that was mine.
I have one last one, and that'll be it. So one of my last nitpicks, and it's something I actually struggle with. So one of the things you talked about was the casting, right? You love the casting, right? Mm-hmm. I also love the casting, but I struggle with one thing.
Oh, I think you told me about this before.
Amy Adams. I actually think that not that she's bad, but I actually think that every person that was picked was absolutely perfect. But part of me thinks she is a little miscast. I did not see the chemistry between her and Henry Cavill. They have chemistry, but like if you look at and I don't want to compare, but the old Superman was Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder. That chemistry is there. Sylvester Stallone and Talia Shire, who plays Adrian, it's there. There is, and again, everyone is perfect, but I do believe there is a part of me that thinks Amy Adams was a weaker link in the chain. And I don't know if because Amy Adams is not Academy Award winning, but she's been nominated multiple times. She's been nominated. She's like the opposite of Meryl Streep, where Meryl Streep be winning. Like, Amy Adams has been nominated. And I've seen her in a lot of movies. Amy Adams can act. She is an actress. But and they got good cast members. You got Kevin Costner, you got Russell Crowe. You got some. They surrounded Henry Cavill, Michael Shannon. They surrounded him with some powerhouses. I feel that there was something about Amy Adams that just did not connect with me.
They just did not say that last part again?
Just did not connect with me. Mm. And again, I don't think that she was bad in the role. And I will use something else where I think, do you remember the first Batman Begins? Right?
Yeah.
I think Katie Holmes is completely miscast. Hence why she wasn't in The Dark Knight.
No, that's not the reason why she wasn't in The Dark
Knight. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know the backstory. But I think she was completely miscast.
So you like the update? You thought the other girl was better?
I thought Maggie Gyllenhaal was much better. I think Katie Holmes was no match. And again, I think that there was no real chemistry between her and Christian Bale. And I think that she was, and I like Katie Holmes, but I think she was completely miscast in Batman Begins. Now, I'm not saying that Amy Adams was on that level, but there's just something about her in that role that just didn't grab me, where everyone else I think was perfect. And that's my last nitpick.
Thoughts? Well, I guess you'll hear my thoughts on my last nitpick. I had to go for 3, and it kind of parries off of what you're saying, but absolutely not as well. And follow me. I thought it was best encompassed by the love story. That was a nitpick of mine. I do not think, and it touches on a couple little nitpicks that I've had with her always just being everywhere. I felt like they kept trying to find a reason to have her run pace with Henry Cavill to let you know that they was going to fall for each other. And I felt like they didn't need that, especially if you knew you was going to do a part 2. But like I said, they were just starting with the first film. If it does good, then we will go on to the next one. So you had to have at least some sort of seedlings for it. And I was cool with seeds. If you look at, and I've said this before, and I think a little bit on camera, if you look at Captain America's Winter Soldier, when you see the chemistry between Scarlett Johansson and Chris Evans, and I've always said this before, I don't think they ever had any intentions of doing the Hulk, Bruce Banner, and Natasha romance. Because remember, even at that time, they already had Ed Norton. I think, no, actually not. Ed Norton I think he already had left by the time they did the second Cap movie. But in Winter Soldier, in the comics, they've had a romance, and I figured that that's what they were going to end up leading towards regardless. But the beginning stages was, I do believe that the intentions was to build the romance between them two. That's why I always felt it was a redirect when they did the Avengers to go out of their way to let you know that, no, her and Bruce Banner has a connection. I say all that to say this. All you had to do was just let them know they had a little chemistry, because to be honest, after you got Amy Adams, investigating who Kal-El really was and find out he was Clark, you didn't really need her like that in the film, because he had to go off-world, deal with Zod, and save the world. But they wanted to keep her around because she's part of his mythos, obviously. But I think also because she's part of the mythos, they kept wanting to insert their love story. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing, because I felt like the subtle chemistry worked up to the kiss. That shit was a forced scene, if you ask me, because she said this weird line about, what they say about the first kiss, and no one ever says that shit she said. I forgot how she said it, and maybe that was part of the joke, but to me it was like, it was so forced. It just felt like we kind of know there's a chemistry there, and it's good. I didn't think that you needed to push it further. I think that the second movie could have focused on the transition of her keeping his secret to them falling for each other, because at that point now she was the only person that knew. So it would have been perfect to now say in the second film, which they haven't even after all this time, but neither here nor there, that they could have focused on their relationship blossoming into something more physical, into having their first kiss in the second film. I don't think the way they presented it in the first film felt, for lack of a better way of expressing it, a little unnatural, or more notably forced. Which kind of, I don't know if that could have been the ripple effects of what you felt as not working, or her not working for you. I don't know if that makes it a little bit more detailed, but for me, the nitpick was the love story. I'm not saying you had to take it completely out, of course, because I felt their chemistry, at least for me, where we differ, I think they had chemistry of some sort, but I think to get them into the romantic, and I think that was too quick of a jump for the character that you created with Amy Adams. She was no damsel in distress. So for her to, I think what would have been more interesting of her was to be surprised that she was so aroused by him, but the arrogance of her aggressiveness as this investigative journalist of note. I think that kind of character that she emoted well, if you ask me. I think that was her best foot forward. I think that's what made her work. I think I don't think that was within the bounds of her character so soon, even at this moment. I think she would have been a lot more reserved, like try not to, like basically fought that animalistic realization of, yo, I am attracted to this person. I think you would have seen that would have been a struggle. I think she would have I think her character would have had a lot more fences up in her love life, as opposed to being so easy to surrender to it so easily. And that's how I looked at it, and that was my last nitpick for Love Story. Your thoughts?
No, I think it kind of lends credence to what I felt. So I think it does, and maybe that's why I felt there was a miscast. I really can't put my finger, because I will keep going with what I said. I can't really put my finger on it, but I can honestly say that that is something I would have to look at, because, like I said, there was just something about that did not click for me. So that could be it also. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I guess that leaves us to the question just before the show that I just started, that I posed once we get to the end, and we're at a little over the hour mark. And which was that I asked the question, was Man of Steel, because of all the divisiveness around it, was Man of Steel ahead of its time or way too early? And what I mean by ahead of its time, meaning that now everybody wants this grounded movie and serious storytelling. So it seems now that we know where Zack Snyder's vision was going, and when people found out what BVS was really supposed to be, a lot of his ideas that he wanted to do that was neutered and then re-put in, all of this stuff. Now, when people wanted this lighthearted filmmaking, when Avengers Endgame and the dust settled from it, everybody was looking to DCEU to carry forward. It seems like now people are looking for this darker storytelling, and it's like, wasn't that what Zack Snyder was giving you? And that's what you just started complaining about a couple years before. Now that everybody knows where Zack Snyder really wanted to take the film, now that you see his whole idea and his roadmap, it was just weird. So I started asking myself the question of, was it way ahead of its time or way too early? And the reason why I say way too early now is, what if this would have came before the MCU, before Iron Man? If this would have been the first superhero, say they didn't do Superman Returns, instead of Superman Returns, this was our Man of Steel, would have been received better, because they tried to do a Christopher Reeves parry with, or from the original Christopher Reeves film with the Superman, I think it was Returns, where they omitted like 3 and 4. They kind of disregarded, and this was supposed to be in continuity from Superman 2. Was it Chris Donner?
Oh, Richard Donner.
Richard Donner film. I wondered, would they have been initially received well? Your thoughts?
No, I think that, so to answer the first question, is Man of Steel ahead of its time? No. Because I'm gonna say yes and no. Was it ahead of its time? And this is why I say no. You had the Christopher Nolan Batman, so this darker, more grounded superhero, we saw that already. We saw it. So,
I mean, I'm letting you talk.
Okay, so we saw it already. So, but what I think is the audience was, I think, a combination of things. We already saw the darker, more grounded, more human-esque story with the Batman trilogy. So we saw that. So that's nothing new. We saw that already. That was done. And remember, Christopher Nolan was a producer on Man of Steel, so we saw this already. We saw it. Even in the trailer for Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder, produced by Christopher Nolan, it's actually Christopher Nolan's Synchrony production company that did the first Man of Steel. So we saw this already. Now the question I ask myself is this: but maybe the audience wasn't ready for Superman to be grounded. Not that we weren't ready for a grounded superhero, because we saw that. Maybe Superman as a character we weren't ready for.
And this is where
then this is where you can add in the whole MCU. Now, would it be received the same before the MCU? I don't know, because we had Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. So I think it's a combination of a few things. I think that it's divisive because of that one particular scene that I did point out, the whole let him die, maybe you should. I think maybe with Batman, and I only could speak for DC, I can only speak for what I know. I think for Batman, darker, more grounded, we can accept that. I think for Superman, maybe people had a problem wrapping that around Superman, because he's nothing but, since inception has been hope, beauty. Superman is America, even though he's not America, but, and I think maybe the audience is ready for a grounded superhero. I don't know, maybe they just weren't ready for Superman, and maybe because he's so powerful. I don't really think it's an MCU thing. I think the MCU was, they were batting 1,000, they were hitting home runs and grand slams, but I really don't think it was an MCU problem. I don't think that it was ahead of its time. I just think the audience wasn't ready for that particular character. That's all. That's how I'll leave it at that. That's my take.
What I want to say is, just to close off on that question, is where you said we've gotten that, and what I wanted to interject on it was that not really, and you kind of touched on it when you finished your thought, was I don't think Batman was written as a darker character, to be honest, and we've seen that of Batman already, like with the 89. He was a darker character. So, and the fact that he had no superpowers, he would kind of have to lend more into his darker nature if you're going to make and the character in and of itself was a grounded character because he had no powers. So, my thing was this was the first time we seen a superhero to that magnitude, because even DC tried their hand with Green Lantern, and he was very light. So, in characters. So, for us to see them take this character, a godlike character, and treat him and give him like the Batman Begins treatment, almost like he's right here, but he's not that type of character. But in this film, he was. So maybe the question was better suited, where maybe they weren't ready to see Superman dealt with on that level. And I think that's a great way to end it off. But I'll leave that question to you guys out there. Do you think that this film was, maybe the real question is, was it ahead of its time, or was it way too early? Or maybe we weren't ready. Maybe it was ahead of its time or way too early for them to do that with Superman. You leave it in the comments below, and let's get the discussion popping down there and talk about this film, because as you can see, we really enjoyed this. So this is actually our first episode on the show for our weekly throwbacks, and I actually had a great time with this one. This was a good film. We talk about this all the time, so for us to present our conversations that we have about this, especially over the years, and submit it to you so you guys could get into our conversation. It was actually fun for me, and I'm hoping it was actually fun for you guys. So, I'm here with T. This is the co-host of our weekly throwbacks. I'm hoping he will be a mainstay. We have an idea. I've actually touched on an idea about I've always told everybody on the channel more people is going to be here. And we got one of our first regulars. I got someone else in mind. And I was talking to T about somebody I had in mind, a lady. And one that is after my own heart when it comes to this horror flicks, the horror flicks. And she put me on a couple joints. Maybe at least she could jump in on one of our shows. And it should be cool because it's all about getting diverse thoughts on how we treat these films. And most importantly, because she's an artist, for an artist to take their type of way, for artists to be a lover of films, the lens is looked at differently, and that's what we're here for, just to show a diverse portfolio of how we take in the movies that we love. So any final words from T?
No, I would just say thank you again for having me. I look forward to the next time we do this again. And to the audience, I really hope that you got a chance to really dive into what we look at and what we're passionate about. And maybe you'll look at Man of Steel again, and wow, I didn't notice that. Man, this is interesting. So thank you again.
Yeah, man. And so from everybody here, from the Flicks Picks and the Nitpicks to all of you, man, we want to make sure that you guys are safe out there under the current circumstances. And we also know that it's a little bit hard for us to go out there and see all the films that we love. But remember, there's so many films out there that you guys may never even given a chance to. And throw in some ideas of films that maybe we need to go look at, and maybe you'll see one of these reviews somewhere on our future episodes. And there's just so much great film and cinematic movies out there that we can actually discuss and we can actually mine for, that in these current times, I think it would behoove you to look up and look into and listen to all the other reviewers out here to see other kind of films that maybe miss your radar, and maybe we can make you fans of those movies as well. Well, all things said, like I always say, from the Flicks Picks and the Nitpicks, just leave it in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time, and as always, till I have a better outro. Chill.